Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. One of the things that I've talked about a lot recently, whether that's in my talk, Grow Your Sales, or the episode that I did about what's going on at the moment in the industry, one of the things that I always like to highlight is the importance of having multiple income streams, of trying lots of different things, of looking at different ways of promoting your business. Today, I'm going to be talking to Fiona Fawcett, who runs Plewsy. Fiona is a former client of mine. We've worked together on ongoing mentoring, as well as looking at her business strategy. And I think she's the perfect example of a business that has played around with different ways of selling to her customer and has really had to learn to juggle both direct to consumer through her website as well as wholesale. Fiona shares so many interesting insights in today's episode, from what it's like to start a business and run it while having children, to the return of trade shows, to thoughts about different ways of promoting your business. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. Fiona, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi.
Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about you and Plewsy?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Fiona. My business is Plewsy, and I'm an illustrator, and I make a selection of paper goods and British-made textiles. So, greetings cards, gift wrap, tea towels, oven gloves, that kind of thing. We predominantly wholesale to lovely indies and a couple of larger retailers, and we also sell directly online. So that's a snapshot.
And when did you start?
So I started in 2015. I'd finished my graphic design degree a few years before, and then I'd worked in graphic design and things kind of didn't work out. It was kind of a redundancy / not much work coming in, that type of a thing. And I was working part-time in a fashion retailer. And I just thought, do you know what? I want to do what I love doing. So I went on a Prince's Trust course, and kind of that helped me launch the business.
Oh, that's amazing. I've forgotten that you came through the Prince's Trust. Yeah, I did some workshops for them before the pandemic. They're such an amazing organisation. You get so much support for young people.
Absolutely. And I actually now volunteer for them because I want to try and give something back. So I still work closely with quite a few of the volunteers for the Trust. And I sometimes speak on some of the Zoom calls, because we obviously haven't been able to do stuff in person, as like a kind of an inspirational speaker, if you like, from somebody that's been through the course, to encourage young people. I just feel it's such a great thing, like to kind of provide a bit of inspiration to people with a business idea.
Yeah, completely, because you've grown it so much. So you started in 2015.
Yeah.
And you started, we were just saying this before we started recording, you started really with wholesale almost immediately, right?
Yeah. So, I feel like I've done it the opposite way to like a lot of people, how they do it. So, but not intentionally, it was just kind of how it happened. So when I started in 15, I originally started with 6 greetings cards in an Etsy shop, because that seemed like the best thing to do. But I stuck these cards on Etsy and just hoped for the best, because they didn't really know anything else. And then from that point, then I did the Prince's Trust course and did the business plan and everything. And I quickly realized that with greetings cards, it was almost like an economies of scale situation.
Yes.
Like the more you buy, the cheaper you get them and everything. So it made sense financially to do wholesale first. And then I took the loan through the Prince's Trust to kind of get things kickstarted. And I spent all that on a trade show. So that's kind of how I got into wholesale first.
Oh, right. So you did a trade show really early on.
Yeah, 2015, did trade show straight away. It was like, honestly, it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
And then so you kept going with wholesale, and you started introducing direct to customer
Yeah. Slowly introduced it. I felt like my head was so far into wholesale and I knew I had to tackle this other thing that needed to be done. But I just didn't have the time. At this point, I didn't have any kids. Like it was 5 days a week on the job, if you like. I suppose at the time it didn't really feel like a proper job because I'd left the part-time retail position. So I was full-time Plewsy. And my head was so far into wholesale that I felt like I didn't know how to even start thinking about it. I knew very little about like the technical side of a website, even though my training was I could design a website. I just didn't really understand how to get an e-commerce site up and running and all of that stuff. So it was really from Etsy to begin with, but it wasn't until sort of the first lockdown when COVID came about that quickly we had to pivot. And I had to learn a lot about selling direct to consumer that side of the business took off.
Wow, that's so crazy. I knew you started with wholesale, but first of all, I suppose I knew all these things, but actually hearing you put it all together. So first of all, you had both your children while the business was up and running.
Yeah, so Wilf was born in 2017 and Ned in 2019. So like the first couple of years were like no kids, and then quickly went to 2 kids. And then also with the business baby, like that is so much, time consuming in itself. So
yeah, I always say I'm just so full of admiration of people who run businesses with small kids, because I don't think it was any coincidence whatsoever that mine were 8 and 11 when I started my business. I just think when they were that small, I mean, I just take my hat off to you, because I could barely get myself out the door to work, let alone
I think it's good that I'm not essentially customer facing, or if I am, it's only like on Zoom at the moment. So getting ready in the morning just doesn't particularly happen. But I also think it helps in many ways because you have to compartmentalize, if that's the right word. Like, that you've got that much time and you need to do this much work in that much time.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you find yourself being like, oh, I've got all day to do that. And I'll do, if I get it done, then that's fine. Whereas now it's much more like, okay, this work has to be done in these 4 hours. And then I need to do the school run and all the clubs and stuff. It just has to you have to be and learn to be much more adaptable and kind of on it, if you like.
Yeah, no, totally. I get that.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that your direct to customer really kicked off in 2020.
Yeah.
Because, it's amazing what you managed to do in 2 years. And now I suppose this is kind of one of the things we wanted to talk about today, was about multiple income streams and how do you even juggle them? Because you started off wholesale.
Yeah.
Then 2020, it was very much focused on direct to consumer because of lockdown, and a lot of the indies that you would have been serving would have been shut.
Absolutely, yeah.
But now we're back to, you've now got this direct to consumer business and you've got the wholesale. So I guess what tips would you give around how do you manage both?
It's really hard. I feel like now that things are, before I sort of say about the tips, now that this is what I said to myself in the lockdown, I was like, almost to myself, like, could you imagine if as we come out of COVID, I've built this side and then suddenly wholesale picks up again and then I've got both things firing well, that would be the dream. And somehow that's kind of nearly happening, and I feel like quite proud of myself for actually managing to get to this point, because COVID almost worked it was a good thing for my business in many ways, but also obviously very challenging. Yeah, I guess managing time on both of them is really difficult. So like many people that know about the business, and especially retailers now, know that I have Rosie that works for me, and she is very heavily on wholesale. So she has a lot of that workload. She was at Top Draw and stuff with us, and, really good customer facing and stuff for retailers. So that kind of, my workload is reduced on that in terms of like business development and account management and stuff. But I still like to have a good feel for that, because ultimately I'm the face of the brand, and I think a lot of people still want to kind of touch base and everything. So really that workload is reduced a little bit for me. But then the retail side of things, that workload has increased massively. But actually I find that is much more my passion, like marketing and all that kind of stuff is a creative outlet, and I find myself really driven with that. So I guess like in top tips are kind of like, and how I manage to work it is really break it down and segment out my working hours and time so that it's really clear. And I do try and do as much training as possible. So like I'll book in like power hours and one-to-ones and things, as you know,
yes.
with experts in their field, to try and learn as much about things as I can, and then implement the knowledge that you learn from that. So then that obviously, as a small business, budgets are tight. So rather than having people do the work for you always, I like to really kind of learn the skill and then implement it myself. So like digital marketing, like emailing and stuff, I've kind of tried to learn about that and the best ways to approach that type of thing. So I guess one of my top tips would be to kind of always learn, and always, always be a sponge. I guess I say this to the Prince's Trust young people as well. It's like always be willing to learn and open to learn, because you're always adding to your own skill set. And almost as like a backup, really, because if for whatever reason my business didn't work out, I guess I've then got those skills on my CV to be able to go and look for other work as well.
No, that's so true, actually, because and I think it's really fascinating. I mean, I find it very interesting, obviously, spending a huge amount of time in small business communities, that we talk a lot about running a business. And obviously, everyone's very passionate about businesses. They're running their business. But it's taboo to talk about what would happen if you stopped running your business. But actually, sometimes it's a really powerful choice that people have made. And I've had a couple of conversations with people who, exactly as you said, they've now got these skill set that they worked really hard on, and they maybe were doing a different job completely before. Then they started running their business, and now they're working in a much more creative field using the skills that they have from their business. And I feel like we very rarely talk about that as part of your small business journey, but actually maybe sometimes that's okay. And I just think that's a really good point that you made there, that it's learning these skills, but they can also really enrich other parts of your life in ways that you maybe can't see.
And I think that, people's lives change and your situations change, and it's not selfish or whatever, big-headed or whatever, to really feel like you've grown your skill set really kind of as a backup plan, really, because if you decided to step away from the business, it's not because your business has failed. It might just be because something in your life has changed, that it's the right decision for you to make. So this is why I always think, this has helped me kind of grow both revenue streams with the wholesale and the retail by just learning different things. And I needed to learn a lot to build the retail thing, I think, more so than wholesale. I don't know why I feel like that. Maybe that's because I've done the wholesale thing from the start.
Yeah. So now you have both, and now you have restarted trade shows, which obviously were on hold. And I'd love to hear a bit more about your experience with that, because obviously, as you said, you've been doing trade shows all the way since 2015. And so you were back this year for the first time. And how did you find that experience? Did you find, obviously it's 7 years down the line, but how did you find the experience of going back to a trade show post-COVID?
Do you know what? I absolutely loved it. I had 3 nights in a hotel without any children waking me up. No, but on a serious note, it was great. Like, I felt like there was a lot of it that felt different. Like, everything felt a bit more scaled down. Like, I don't know whether it's because the organisers had struggled to fill the place, or whether it was a decision made because of COVID in terms of having the amount of visitors in. I'm not sure, but so it was Top Draw that we've just done in January. It was supposed to be in January and it was in February. So that's the one that I'm talking about. And I don't know, it felt more scaled down, but actually it had a really nice feel to it. Like, it felt like the exhibitors and the visitors wanted to be there, like really wanted to be there, because it was the first one, I think, possibly, unless Spring Fair had it, where people didn't need to wear masks if they didn't want to. And it felt like we were kind of, 2 years previously, where you could just have a proper conversation with somebody and we weren't feeling that nervous about being near each other, and we got to show our new designs in person, like, rather than having to take lovely images and kind of do it through marketing, we were actually able to speak directly, and it felt really good to be able to do that. And I think for us, it was a really good show. I mean, I was kind of chatting around and people were saying, the visitor count, the footfall feels quite low. And maybe it did, there's always going to be people that are a little bit nervous about coming out still and bits and bobs. But I've never massively felt that trade shows have been, they feel different to kind of a retail show, that it's never crowds and crowds of people. You get kind of like clumps of people, if you like, and busy spells. But yeah, it felt really nice to be there. And as I say, we had a really good show. So maybe it's a good thing for trade shows that they were paused, because I felt like they were maybe dying off a little bit before COVID, because obviously they're so expensive and everything for the exhibitors and the small businesses and stuff. It's hard to be there. So maybe it's reinvigorated the trade shows, which would be a great thing. I think people appreciate the face-to-face element again. To be able to go and walk around and see all the new products and really appreciate the hard work that the designer makers have put into making and, bringing these products to market, you appreciate the quality much more, and you appreciate, all the effort that goes into the stand, because you kind of think, oh, we've not been able to do that. I mean, this is me speaking on behalf of a buyer, I suppose, which I don't have any. But, it felt, even just walking around on a morning and looking at all the stands, you definitely felt like lucky to be back there and being able to, be in that situation again, which, because you never expected it to be taken away. Do you know, it's a bit, it sounds a bit weird, but you never really thought that you wouldn't be able to do that. So, and for us, because we like a chat with our customers, our wholesale customers, the face-to-face element is really important. Like, because we always try and pick up the phone and chat anyway to our wholesale customers, that actually speaking face-to-face and meeting people face-to-face is really, really important in valuing that relationship.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because you were talking about the digital, but this is really sort of matching up offline as well as the online experience. The two of them together combined is more powerful than one on their own.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of coincides with the wholesale and retail, like both parts of the business, like offline and online working together are like the dream combination, really, because as we all move forward into a much more kind of digital future, I'm a passionate person for like print is not dead. Like, I feel like we always need to have that traditional form of promotion. Like, and I think it's really, for me, as somebody who's trained in graphic design and branding and all that type of thing, I think it's really important for us to keep that printed form going. So like a combination of online social and promotion and digital marketing and all that, combined with, like a good direct mail marketing campaign that arrives through the letterbox, is a perfect combination for like promotion and recipe for success, dare I say it.
It's so interesting that, because I think you're right. And I think it's all about degrees. And I was talking to the CEO of Papier, for example, about their US expansion. And he was talking about the same thing, about that almost as digital becomes the norm, then that physical, that print becomes almost even more appealing, because it's not what people are used to. And when everybody used to send direct mailers, then in a way they were a bit more annoying than when you never got them. And I remember I was talking as well to Charlotte Pierce, who runs Inkpact, talking about the power of handwritten messages. And she was saying about how it's like 100% open rate. Like, an email, if you're lucky, you're at like 20% open rate. But a handwritten envelope has got like 100%. Because who wouldn't open a handwritten envelope?
Well, that's it, isn't it? Like, if you just think of like sending Christmas cards or a birthday card and stuff, all the stuff that we went back, I feel like we're talking about COVID again, but like when you go back to the beginning of lockdown, like the retail business for me, a lot of it was greetings card bundles, because people wanted to do a handwritten message to send in the post to their friends and family that we couldn't see. And it really put the importance and kind of, was back to kind of, it's a little bit special, isn't it? To receive something handwritten in the post. So if we think about that, we do like handwritten notes and stuff and campaigns and everything to our retailers. And I think, like you say, 100% open rate, like, because it lands on their desk, who's not going to open it? Like, you've got much more of a conversion chance with that than you have with automated emails and stuff.
Yeah. That's such a good point, though. It's funny because it's almost like the theme that runs through everything, through the business, through your business and through the marketing, is the combination of the online and the digital, and that having to work, but then also the importance of the in-person and the physical and making those connections. And of course you had a pop-up shop in your unit as well, didn't you?
Yeah. So actually now where I'm sat, it was the pop-up shop before Christmas. So we ran it, I think we ran it from August through to Christmas last year, and it was great. Like, we're not in a busy part, we're kind of tucked away in the town where we are, so the footfall wasn't huge, but we had people dropping in that knew the brand, and we had like people kind of with a sign at the end of the road and stuff. And it was lovely, like, to actually speak to our customers face to face, local ones as well, because really the majority of our customers aren't actually that local now, with everything kind of been able to reach people far away. But yeah, I've turned it back into the office now because we needed the storage space. But I'd love to do a pop-up kind of on a high street, like, in a much more, a better location, so that you'd get natural footfall. Yeah, I'd really love to do that.
And did you find that it was really interesting to hear people's feedback? Because I know a lot of the time when people who start online, almost exclusively online, and then do either pop-ups or even fairs and markets, it's that ability to really, that you just don't get online. Like, you see people on your website, but you've no idea what they're thinking. Whereas when people are actually there, they might say, oh, I really like this, or do you have this in a different color? And you suddenly all of a sudden get this input that you just are missing in a digital form.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because it actually takes you back to sort of like when we did the odd market and stuff. Even though retail wasn't really a thing, we did used to do there's some markets in Leeds that we used to do before COVID and stuff, occasionally on a weekend. And it takes me back to that, people can't hide behind a screen, so their kind of like reactions are genuine. Like, it's really nice. And also, like, I like to kind of question people a little bit and find out a little bit more about what they do think, because it's really good, like, research. And also, for going forward, for designing the new collections and stuff, it's kind of like, if I've got thoughts in my head, I can ask them directly, and it's an instant response. Like, there's no waiting time for people to come back with a reply or filling in a questionnaire. Like, the research is like straight away. So it's really good. And it's hard as well, because obviously you've got to listen to what you sometimes don't want to hear, but then you've got to take that stuff on board in order to improve, I guess.
Yeah, or you kind of have to weigh it up against, you've got to have the vision, and you've got to almost lead the customer where you want to lead them, but at the same time you're getting the input.
But the main thing for us, like, we really love being at the trade shows again, because ultimately people buy from people. And I think that was a key thing, like, for us in our strategy going into Top Draw, like, really be approachable and be there to answer any questions, and just have that tone of voice that I hope the brand kind of portrays.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, I think it's so important, everything you said about building the relationships as well. So my last question then, to wrap this up, I feel like we could talk all day, but as you've grown, so you've been going, this is your 7th year this year.
In May.
Amazing. 7-year birthday. What a huge achievement. So one of the things that I find that when people start their businesses, they have this assumption that all I need to do is start selling or kind of get some traction, which of course is true at the beginning, but people have this vision that as you grow, it all just gets easier. So how have you found, as the business has grown and developed over the last 7 years, what challenges have you found, or what do you think has surprised you, or just generally how's your experience changed over time?
That's really hard. So I feel like if I'd been sat here 3 years ago and like thinking forward to now, would I have thought that these challenges I'm facing now, would they be the ones that I thought I would be facing? I guess some, in some senses, like managing time, like juggling the family and the business and stuff. And kind of, we are in a period of like growth at the moment, and it's learning. What I'm facing challenges with now is like kind of how to manage that growth and which decisions to make to manage that growth, because ultimately I don't want to be a massive company. I just kind of want to have it manageable so I can remain really involved in it. And it's making decisions on how to kind of keep reins on the business, if you like. But yeah, the biggest challenges for me are like production and kind of issues around production that I think we would still be having had the last 2 years not happened, like in terms of stock levels and kind of that type of thing. But then obviously we've had issues thrown in over the last couple of years that have caused havoc with production in terms of like, workforce has been off and slowing down, and then timeframes are increased, and then actually getting, so like cotton and stuff, actually importing that due to Brexit and whatever, like all these kind of things. Obviously, I couldn't predict that these would have happened, but I feel like it's nothing that I'm not experiencing anything different to what other people are experiencing. So it's kind of something that I think everybody's trying to navigate. But yeah, I guess I couldn't have thought that all this would be on my shoulders. And sometimes I think, like, why have I chosen to do this? But actually, it's quite like, you do feel proud of yourself when you launch a new collection and you've navigated all of these challenges, and then you do a trade show and you get a really nice warm reception from new faces and new customers and stuff. It makes it, really worthwhile, and makes you realize that very lucky to be able to be in this position.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just feel like I've waffled through the question.
No, I think you're right. There's unique challenges that nobody could have foreseen back in 2015. Yeah. But then at the same time, I think what you're talking about is, well, there's a couple of things. The other thing I also say is that people assume that almost like as your sales grow, it all just becomes easier because there's money coming in. But then there's all of these other decisions you have to make about staffing, about your studio, about your stock. It's like, as the numbers get bigger, it doesn't get easier. If anything, it can get a bit harder. So it's always about getting that sort of learning.
Absolutely. I think, as the sales grow, as your turnover grows, I do think the challenges become harder. I think you almost, for me, because I'm a designer first and foremost, like one of the main challenges is that I'm not actually creative that much, because I'm kind of at that point of like just the growth stage where like I need to recruit in small capacity to do some jobs. So that would then leave me with more time to be creative. That's one of the hardest things. And I think the more your turnover grows, almost the less you have, for me, less time to be creative, because you have to navigate all the rest of the business with all those different hats that you have to wear, like as a small business owner. But like I say, it's never boring. It just, I wouldn't say it gets easier though. It definitely gets more challenging.
I suppose you've also got, I think that's the other thing about your business as well, is you've always been really rooted in the small business community. You've got a lot of other small businesses that you've got that network, that community support. You've done your, like you do your shop small graphics that you share, and that you quite often see them all over Instagram, and you're very much part of that small business community. Do you think that's been an important part of your journey as well?
Absolutely. I think in the past couple of years as well, just to have those girls to kind of, bounce ideas off and chat through, like even if sales are slow, you can be like, is everybody else experiencing this? And it's just kind of like a support network.
Yeah,
I tend to dip in and dip out. We have a group that we all chat on and stuff, but it's amazing to just have that community there. And like, if you've got an idea, like the shop small thing, like that kind of came about and I did the graphic for it and everyone's behind it 100%. Like, and I just feel like there's always somebody there that's got you back. And it's because it can be quite lonely, like running your business. If you compare it to like people working in a larger business, like they've got colleagues around them, like you don't have that. So this kind of small business community, it's invaluable, really. Don't know how, and you find out loads of stuff. It's just nice to have the girls like to chat to.
Yeah, for sure. Someone to bounce ideas off. Thank you so much for tuning in. Why not head over to Instagram and say hi to Fiona at Plewsy. Go check out plewsy.com as well. And why not come over and say hi to me at Resilient Retail Club? Let me know what you thought of today's episode, or tell me what your key takeaway was. I'd also love to see where you are when you're listening to the podcast. I enjoy it so much when people share photos of them tuning in. So pop over to Instagram today and say hi. Of course, if you have a moment to rate and review the podcast, it makes such a huge difference. I absolutely love to read your reviews, and I appreciate every single one of them, every single rating as well. You can rate them in iTunes, or if you're listening in Spotify, nearly said Shopify then, as always, you can actually click to rate the podcast in the app. And of course, if you follow or subscribe, you'll be the first to know about every new episode. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow, or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions. or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.